flying to the sun, this week on Planetary Radio. Welcome to Public Radio's travel show that takes you to the final frontier. I'm Matt Kaplan of the Planetary Society. NASA is preparing to go to the only star within reach, the one our planet is whirling around right now. We'll talk with program scientist Lika Guhatha-Kurta about how Solar Probe Plus will get to within just 4 million miles of the sun's surface. Emily Lakdawalla has both kudos and criticism for Discover magazine this week. We'll hear that and more from her in a minute. What does the TV series Top Chef have to say about our space exploration priorities? That's the question Bill Nye will explore. And before you know it, we'll be visiting again with Bruce Betts, learning about the current night sky and how you can win a Planetary Radio t-shirt. Asteroids were in the news last week. You probably heard about the 2 space rocks that passed by Earth just 3 days after they were discovered. Now, while you certainly would not have wanted one of these to land on you, they weren't nearly big enough to cause more than local or regional heartache. As it happens, they just zipped on by, though well inside the orbit of the Moon. The romantically titled 2010 RF-12 came within just double the distance of geosynchronous satellites. NASA scientist Lindley Johnson is in charge of the agency's near-Earth observations.
These are fairly small objects, and they're quite numerous in the inner solar system. There's probably tens of millions of them. We pick these up several times a year, but actually, if we had the capability, we think we'd probably see these on a daily basis.
So go ahead, breathe a sigh of relief. But remember, the one with our name on it is still out there. Let's hear from Emily Lakdawalla. She is the Planetary Society's Science and Technology Coordinator. Emily, several things to talk about, and many more in last week's blog entries that we won't have time to get to. Sticking to some of your entries, first one you wanted to mention is about Deep Impact getting ready to continue its mission.
Yeah, this is recycling at its best. They're taking Deep Impact, which is the spacecraft that crashed a large impactor into Comet Tempel 1 5 years ago. They're going to fly it past a second comet. This one is called Hartley 2, and that encounter is on November 4th. They've just started imaging the comet. It's just a little fuzzball in a background of stars, but those images will improve over the next 2 months, and I'm looking forward to that.
And we'll track that, of course, on this program. Now let's get to, I'll call it a bit of editorializing on your part about an editorial of sorts in Discover magazine, or at least a commentary.
That's right. I try not to editorialize very much on my blog. I try to stick to the facts, but every once in a while something really gets my goat, and this one did. And first I actually was elated when I saw that when Discover was looking back over 30 years of science writing in Discover magazine, the number one topic that they picked to lead the article was bad astronomer Phil Plate's little piece on how amazing the changes have been in space science over the past 30 years, how all these dead worlds have suddenly turned into living ones with oceans and possible life, and how robotic spacecraft have really brought all that back to us. And then just 8 page turns later, another writer said that NASA was grounded and that Russians had won the space race after all because of the problems with the manned space program. That just really got my goat, because so many people equate NASA with the manned space program and don't realize how successful the robotics space program has been over the last couple of decades, and how, in fact, it's really the heyday of robotic exploration right now.
Got your dander up. Yeah, we are in a golden age of space exploration.
We really are. There's more robotic spacecraft exploring the solar system, exploring more different places, returning more data than there ever has been before. And it's just this great richness that people don't realize.
And here's another example of that, with just a few seconds left. 2 natural bridges on the Moon. Thank you for printing one of them, the 3D image. And everybody out there, put on your red and blue 3D glasses and take a look at this blog entry.
Yeah, Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter is just returning incredible high-resolution views of the Moon, and we're seeing artifacts that we left behind there decades ago for the first time.
All out there for you to find in last week's blog entries. Be sure to keep track as Emily follows everything going on in space exploration, especially on the Planetary Society. She is the Science and Technology Coordinator for the Planetary Society and a contributing editor for Not Discover, Sky and Telescope magazine, which would never do that. Thanks, Emily.
Thank you, Matt.
Bill Nye is also thinking about our glorious robotic exploration successes, But he reminds us in this week's commentary that, like it or not, nothing excites the public like seeing humans go where they've never gone before.
Hey, Bill Nye, the planetary guy here, now the executive director of the Planetary Society. And as I took office, if I may, and looked around, I was amazed again at how many space missions are going on right now. How many spacecraft are out in our solar system having a look around at our own planets, our own objects that be orbiting the sun, and at these distant stars that have planets around them themselves. There are dozens of amazing missions going on right now. But what's the big news story this week? Top Chef. Top Chef is sponsoring a thing with Chef Testants to make a dish, a food item that will be used on the very last space shuttle mission. And that's big news. Do you know why? Because there are people involved. That's why Buzz Aldrin is going around the world right now saying we got to send people onto these new missions to distant places like asteroids and eventually the planet Mars. These missions are astonishing. The things that people are thinking about, sending people way out in orbits way beyond the Earth, looking at new things and making discoveries that we can't even imagine right now. So what we got to do, everybody, is do something new and exciting in space. We got to get the space agencies around the world to get together and send people to exciting new places to make discoveries. And you know what they're going to find? Nobody knows what they're going to find. That's why we're going. It's an exciting time in robotics, and it will be an astonishingly exciting time in human exploration. I got to fly. Bill Nye, the executive director guy. Wow.
Ray Bradbury once wrote a lyrically beautiful story about astronauts who fly to the sun and scoop up some of its fiery substance. I don't think you'd find many volunteers for such a mission, but there is much that might be learned if we could send a robotic probe plunging through the sun's mysterious atmospheric layer called the corona. NASA is now developing a mission that will do exactly that. The agency has just selected the teams that will build instruments for Solar Probe Plus, which it hopes to launch by 2018. Lika Guhatha-Kurta says many challenges remain. She is program scientist for the spacecraft. She has studied our star for many years, relying on a variety of instruments and spacecraft. Lika also leads a global effort called International Living with a Star, or ILWS. She called me last week from her office at NASA headquarters in Washington, D.C. Lika, thanks very much for joining us on Planetary Radio, and congratulations on what looks like a mission to the sun sometime before this decade is out.
That's correct.
I find this extremely exciting, as do a lot of our listeners, because everyone is fascinated by this concept of going to the sun. I mean, how many hundreds of times have you heard that horrible old joke about NASA sending a mission to the sun? How are they going to do that? They're going at night.
I know.
You don't have that luxury. How will you allow this spacecraft to survive just 7 million kilometers from the sun?
Yes, it's scorching heat is what I can say. Typically a spacecraft in the Earth environment where we have most of our satellites, it's going to be 500 times more than that. If you think of the closest we have been, it's to Mercury. And Mercury is about 36 million miles from the surface of the sun. And we are going, you said 4 million miles, from the surface of the sun. So you can see the difference between 36 million miles, 4 million miles. Yes, it's going to be very, very hot. And the question is, how are we going to protect both our spacecraft as well as our sensors, which are really most important in this endeavor? What we have is kind of a novel design for a spacecraft, and the spacecraft has gone through many iterations over time. And what we have right now is kind of a flat, round disk made of carbon-carbon composite with foam